when I arrived in City Hall, the whole idea of, in fact, there's a whole lot of things that when I arrived here, I was never expecting to have to deal with, but certainly the idea of cryptocurrency, data mining, that whole industry um, wasn't anything that was really on the radar screen here, except what I didn't know is that they had already sort of um, snuck into the area a couple of years before I arrived here. Um, we didn't discover their presence until they moved out of the buildings that they were in. So that'll take me directly to where the city of Niagara Falls issue is. These companies came into town and inhabited vacated large industrial sites. And they did that because the trunk of power was already run to those sites. And so for them, it literally was as easy as it is for you to plug a lamp in the wall. They didn't have to generate anything. They didn't have to do anything. All they had to do was set up shop and literally plug in. So unlike our neighbors, ours isn't a fossil fuel driven industry. Having said that, that doesn't make it any better because they are high energy users, which creates other stresses. And then, of course, the one environmental stress that was obvious to our residents was noise. These were incredibly noisy businesses, so much so they had disturbed the quality of life for large swatches of our community. So once this became apparent to us, we started out with dialogue. I mean, as a lawyer, I recognize that courtrooms, I made a living there. But it never hurts to start with a dialogue. So we engaged the two operators and thought that we might be able to come to an understanding of what their process was and ways in which they could become a better corporate neighbor. It became rapidly clear to us that they weren't interested in that. The sole purpose of their existence here was it was better than Texas because they didn't have to spend as much money on air conditioning and cooling, because environmentally we could help them, or climate-wise we could help them. And so the location was critical to them, and all they really wanted to do was what they do. And so in late 2021, we had imposed a moratorium. Now, in advance of the moratorium, we had started the discussions about what we wanted to do with regard to zoning and how we wanted to approach these businesses. And so we imposed a moratorium late 2021. It was a 180-day moratorium to give us a chance to sort of put the brakes on anyone else coming into the community, and then addressing what we're going to do with these current operators. Now, it was our position that they were illegal operations. Just because they plopped themselves in an industrial zone, our industrial zoning ordinance defines an industrial a business as something that is, among other definitions, manufacturing. These companies manufacture nothing. And so they were trying to hide behind the theory that they were industrial, because since they were in an industrial zone, a lot of the rules didn't apply to them. So we first had to construct what we thought was a pathway for cryptocurrency miners to exist in the community. And it starts out by suggesting that their operations were illegal, and that we wanted to prepare a zoning ordinance that could give them an opportunity to become a legally operating entity, as well as be sensitive to the community as well as the environment. That's where the rubber met the road. And as I alluded to earlier, I'll get into something that happened today. Was a pivotal court date for us with the data miners, and I'll get into that in just a moment. So we were able to get in front of the council within 180 days a piece of legislation that sort of walked out what we called a high energy usage overlay district. Essentially, what the district talks about is that it defines what high energy users are, and that includes these entities. And then it indicates certain zoning restrictions for what they have to do, much of which in our instance involved noise mitigation, right? So it was approved by the planning boards, it was approved by our city council, and it became the law. Notwithstanding the law, they continued to operate. And so ultimately, we went through the various processes procedurally, culminating in an application to state Supreme Court for a temporary restraining order against their continued operation. They flaunted everything. I mean, they were served. We ultimately had to then take our temporary restraining order to cease and desist operations. And that's what the judge ordered. He ordered that all of these operations were to cease immediately, pending a return on that, and or in the alternative, application under the current ordinance. Now, these groups wanted to challenge the ordinance, and so the second option wasn't available. They didn't want to avail themselves of it. Today, at 11 o'clock, there was a return on an ultimate contempt application for the original restraining order that was ignored by these companies. And today, late morning, the state Supreme Court issued an order holding the miners in contempt, imposing a $10,000 a day fine dating back to December 9th through January 31st. They're to make payment on that fine directly to the city by February 1st. And if they continue past January 31st in operation, then the fine becomes $25,000 a day. And their requests to limit, modify, or vacate the temporary restraining order were all denied. So from the city of Niagara Falls perspective, we think it's a big win. Not just, I mean, money is one thing, and the amount they'll have to pay is one thing, and I suspect that with these characters, money is less of an issue for them. But I think, conceptually, I think procedurally, and I also think in terms of the optics of it, our victory rings a bell for other communities that you could take these guys on, and if you just confront them, on the law in the courtroom, you can have success. I mean, part of that is making sure that you have a statute that isn't just prescriptive, and that's the thing that we said initially. If we wanted to, the city of Niagara Falls could have drafted an ordinance that simply legislated them out of existence. Now that would likely have established a better foothold for them, because remember, they were already operating in the community. And so for us to all of a sudden ex post facto declare them outlawed would have given them, I think, perhaps a better constitutional foothold. We provided them with a pathway to legitimacy. They've ignored that. And so I think that gave the city, I think, a stronger hand in the courtroom to say, look, we're not saying that you can't operate here. We're just saying that there are certain rules that you, as every business, has to comply with. And in fact, in this instance, the rules are specific to your industry and what you have to do. There are a number of pieces to it. It speaks to the energy usage. It speaks to, and this is kind of a bit of an empty, sort of a paper tiger for us, because they're not using fossil fuels to fire up their business. But included in it, it talked about replacement of green energy for the green energy used. So they can check that box simply because of the nature of the energy that is generated here in the city of Niagara Falls. So you know, it's a wait and see attitude right now. I mean, I suspect they may appeal this order. I just don't know how successful they will be at the appellate division when, you know, one judge has already determined that they are in violation of the statute and issued a temporary restraining order. A second judge has now found them in contempt of the restraining order. And so I'm just finding it difficult that a panel of judges in Rochester is going to say, nah, never mind, go right ahead and work. So having said that to you, I don't want to appear, I'm not counting my chickens before they're hatched. I know that this is not the last battle. We have a hearing date scheduled for early March on an injunction that we are looking to impose upon them so that they are enjoined from any efforts until they comply with our statute. They tried, by the way, they filed Article 78 actions, which are, for those who don't know, it is a writ that is written into state law, which can direct a judge can direct a government entity to do certain things that that government entity is currently unwilling to do. And so their Article 78 action was an action to direct the city government and me personally to refrain from enforcing the zoning ordinance that the zoning amendments that were passed with regard to this type of business. I know I threw a lot out there, and I don't know if somebody wants to circle back and ask me anything about what I have shared. I'm happy to answer questions or expound on anything that's of interest to the members.
I was just wondering, Mayor, about the ordinance was that like spelled out in decibels, or you said it
Yes.
was a noise ordinance? How was that?
Well, it's wrapped into our high energy usage overlay district are noise parameters. So it is not a separate noise ordinance, but wrapped into it in defining who this overlay district would apply to. It indicates decibel levels that are permissible. And maybe I should also give you a little bit of information on what is a high energy usage overlay district. First of all, we define the districts that this type of business could be in. We limit it to strictly industrial. So it cannot be in what are called either commercial or business park districts. It is strictly limited to industrial districts. And so if I'm operating a traditional industrial business, I'm in that district simply by definition of the zoning ordinance. If I am now a high energy use business like cryptocurrency, which is defined in our ordinance as being a high energy usage business, I now have to not only comply with the industrial zoning requirements, but I also have to comply with the overlay requirements of this ordinance. So you take the district that this business is permitted in, and that is an industrial, you overlay it with these additional requirements. Now, these requirements wouldn't be necessary for a traditional industrial non-high energy business, but they are required for these high energy businesses in the industrial center. I hope that made sense to you.
Yeah, it did. I just, were there neighbors around that were being bothered by the noise?
Yeah, I mean, the noise in connection with this, I don't know. Let me try to see if I can define it for you. If this business is on Buffalo Avenue with its south side facing the Niagara Scenic Parkway and the Upper Niagara River, people were hearing the noise from this business. And I'm just picking on the one that's on Buffalo Avenue. There's another one a little farther to the east, but they were hearing noise from this business as much as 10 to 12 blocks north and as wide as a swatch of property that would go from that point 6 blocks east and 6 blocks west. So you're talking about a 12 block by 12 block zone that was being impacted. There were other people who said, you know, on a quiet night, and I will tell you this myself, I live a good set of miles north of this. And on a quiet night in my backyard in the spring or the summer, I'll hear the roar of the falls. You know, a quiet, still night. We all know what that's like in our communities. With this thing, folks were hearing this even farther than that 12 by 12 zone that I was talking to you about. Because, and the closer you got, there were some who simply said, it's like living next to an airport where you have that constant hum of jet engines. Now, what's causing that? As you know, they've dropped these shipping containers, which, by the way, it's also contained in our zoning ordinance that shipping containers are buildings for purposes of zoning requirements, which means that you can't just drop these things in there. You're going to have appropriate fire suppression. You're going to have safety doors so that people can get in and get out. And now with this cooling mechanism that they're putting on there, that's what was causing the horrendous noise, just these 24/7 fans.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really for your constituents.
Yeah, they're, I called everyone today. We ended up getting 5. We had to have some residents who could sign affidavits to help us along. And so each one of them got a phone call today from me, telling them that, you know, we won, but, you know, it's not like they're gone yet, right? So this is sort of like the first inning. You know, we won the first inning, first quarter.
So I have some real quick questions.
Sure.
There's 2 facilities, you say, or is there more than 2?
We have 2 operating, and there were at least another 3 that were looking to get their foot in the door. So that's why the moratorium was important. We had to tap the brakes so that we weren't getting overloaded with these characters.
Okay, great. This is thrilling. And second question, are they all Bitcoin or what coins are they? Do
They
you know?
are, to my knowledge, all Bitcoin.
Okay. And 3, would you be willing, I'm part of a national crypto group. Would you be willing to speak to that group at some point if they're interested?
If they're interested in hearing from me, I'm more than happy to share our experience.
Okay. Great, that's great.
Sure.
Congratulate, I mean, I really, more power to you. Thank
You know,
you.
the Niagara Gazette
No
was
pun
in the,
intended.
thank you. The Niagara Gazette was in the courtroom today, and I saw the reporter here. We had a late night, a late afternoon meeting, and I said, you know, could you just give me one of those old World War II headlines that say "We win" so I could hold it up? I think communities everywhere want to say, "Look, we win. We can win."
This is Jeff Schulman. I actually live in Croton-on-Hudson, down in the mid-Hudson area. So a couple questions for you, and kind of maybe nerdy. Is there a place where we can actually see your ordinance so it can be sort of copied, if you will, with other locations?
You know what I will do? I will get I'll make sure that our IT folks, I don't know if it's posted. It should be. But I will see if our IT folks can make sure that it is. I know one thing that is on there. It's on our homepage. By the way, our city website's going through renovation because it's archaic and painful. I want residents to be able to get a pool permit sitting in their living room and be able to pay by Venmo or pay, but they can't do that right now. So I'm dragging us into the late 20th century. I'm not going to push the button and go to 21 yet, but we're going to get there. But I want to get that up on board. And then what I'll do is I'll communicate with our contact who got me here today to let you know. And then obviously you can spread that around to everyone who's on here today.
Okay, and then another follow-up question is, what Supreme Court heard the case? And if I wanted to look at the arguments pro and con, is there a docket number or something you could pass out?
Sure, I can share that too. I don't have it here before me, but I will share that. It was heard in Niagara County Supreme Court. The judge was Judge Edward Pace. He was brand spanking new too. You know, it was great. He, you know, we had one of our more veteran judges. The cases were originally filed with that judge, and then once Judge Pace got on board, he was appointed to fill a vacancy. He's a former Orchard Park Town Justice and a lawyer for 44 years. I must say that while Ed and I have been around about as long together in the practice, our paths never crossed. But I was somewhat worried that, you know, this could be a rather complicated set of circumstances. But, you know, he's a lawyer, and I got to hand it to him. You know, he sunk his teeth into it, didn't get bogged down in a lot of nonsense. And of course, we think he did the right thing. But I'll get that information as well, a docket number, so that you can look at it.
Okay, thank you very much, and a very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jack Knack here, and I'm from North Tonawanda. And what I'm trying to do is, we have a industrial noise. It's not crypto, but it's another industry. And I talked to Mayor Tyler about this. I looked into decibel A and decibel C. It's two different readings. And the decibel A readings, for a little bit of history, in 1974, the EPA passed regulations on decibel A. And then in 1976, the city of North Tonawanda adopted the code for decibel A, but they have no code for decibel C. And I've been taking readings. I've had to have a noise monitor, and there's a definite difference between decibel C, which are the industrial noises, and the decibel A band, which does not, when the band filters out the lower noises. So when a code enforcement guy comes and does the decibel A, you can hear the noise, but it's not reading on the decibel A, but the decibel C is screaming. And I'm wondering if somehow people could get together and get a law going for decibel C that will be used for all industrial areas, so noise won't be a problem. With the cryptocurrency, my problem here in North Tonawanda, and the North Tonawanda cryptocurrency, Niagara Falls, wherever. I just want to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, you know, that's a good question. I have to tell you what we did here. For that specific reason, we flipped the script. We said to the operator, it's your job to show us you're in compliance. You pay for the noise order. You pay for the noise study. You take the tests. You do the readings, and we'll pick who's going to do it, but it's at your expense, and they're going to have to show us independent proof of compliance. So rather than have our code enforcement people go out there, now remember, all of these things in the industrial zone really are situated out on the river. And so in terms of the potential for background disturbance, you know, if you've all been out to the falls, you know how it can be. And so you're bound to get some background noise that could skew your readings. So what we've done is, you know, we've put them on their heels to have to pay for the noise testing that by a vendor we select. It's been we have one of the two operators who has chosen to go down the path of trying to comply. They have made an application. They are going through the process. I'd like to think that perhaps by March, we might be able to issue a permit for them. In the end, folks, I don't think there's a mayor around who wants to be anti-business, but I've got to balance the delicate piece between business and quality of life. And I don't care what business you're in, when you start disturbing people in their neighborhoods. I had a poor woman who said she couldn't put her baby to sleep. I mean, those are the kinds of stories that I don't care where you are on the climate metrics. I don't care where you are on any of those things. That's disturbing to me. You know, at some point, People are buying their homes and living in their neighborhoods, and all of a sudden some invasion happens. That's just wrong.
Right, do you think though, there could be a way to get a decibel C code written and passed by like maybe a state legislature, just to address this problem? Then industry will have to comply with
Well-
proper noise abatement.
Well, let me suggest this to you. Getting it done at the state level is probably a heavy lift.
Yeah. Too
It
slow.
might be, you might be able to do it sort of imposing a county requirement. That might be a little easier attack. So now, you have this regional requirement. And so that might be an avenue to go down. Because remember something, New York State is a big, wide, different place. And I have always found in my entire professional career, the minute you cross the border into Westchester County, the world just changes. It's a different, it's different from those of us that are mid-state and upstate and North Country. It's just different.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I have a couple questions. The simple one is, which companies are you in litigation with now? What are their names?
US Bitcoin, I think is the name of it. They're the most offensive participant, and the other is Block Fusion. I have to tell you that it's Block Fusion that's really trying to see if they can comply with and come in line with our ordinance. US Bitcoin has flat out failed and refused, and actually their arrogance is more disturbing to me than anything.